Step 7, we humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. We humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. And the hymn reference there is God. And so if God is not for you, if you have a different understanding of your higher power, or if you have a different understanding of God as not being male, don't let that trip you up, because the enemy really, really, really wants us tripped up. The disease wants us to stay sick, and it will seize on any little thing, any little thing. Character defects or shortcomings are those things that cause pain and misery all of our lives. If they contributed to our health and happiness, we would not have to come to such a state of desperation. We had to become ready to have God, as we understood God, remove these defects. Having decided that we want God to relieve us of the useless or destructive aspects of our personalities, we have arrived at the 7th step. We couldn't handle the ordeal of life all by ourselves. It wasn't until we made a real mess of our lives that we realized we couldn't do it alone. By admitting this, we achieved a glimpse of humility. This is the main ingredient of step 7. Humility is a result of getting honest with ourselves. We have practiced being honest since step 1. We accepted our addiction and powerlessness. We found a strength beyond ourselves and learned to rely on it. We examined our lives and discovered who we really are. To be truly humble is to accept and honestly try to be ourselves. None of us is perfectly good or perfectly bad. We are people who have assets and liabilities. More important, we are human. I said at the beginning that I had such a problem with this we stuff. And the NA Big Book tells us we couldn't handle the ordeal of life all by ourselves. I used to hear people talk about being a grateful recovering alcoholic, a grateful recovering addict. And I would think, are they just lying? There's nobody grateful for this. How can anybody be grateful for this? I mean, when we're new and our lives are a mess, we are a mess. It is hard to sit in a room and think anybody is grateful for this. Why would anybody be grateful for this? But then we come around for a while and what we hear people saying, and I heard it literally this morning in a meeting, because I start my day with a meeting after 20 years. Yes, I still start my day with a meeting. What we find is that a lot of us aren't sure that we would have gotten this gift of transformation, this gift of learning to let go of what isn't working and live fully into our authentic selves. A lot of us are convinced that we would never have gotten the life that we have today, if not for the horror of our addictions. And it is a horror. It is awful. As I said in the first 3 steps, nobody wants to be an addict. Nobody wants to live like this. It is horrible. We are trapped inside of a hell that we don't know how to get out of. It is just misery. And unfortunately, we bring people around us down with us. Humility, the Big Book says, is a result of getting honest with ourselves. We have practiced being honest since step 1. We accepted our addiction and powerlessness, and we found a strength beyond ourselves and learned to rely on it. And part of that strength is being in the fellowship with other people. Yes, it's the God of my understanding, but it's also being in fellowship. I can't do this alone. Not only can I not do recovery alone, I can't do life alone. And I want to do it. I tried to, but I can't. It's not how we're meant to be. We are created in community. We are created in human families. We are created to do this thing with others. And for me, I want to make sure that those others are on the same path I'm on, are also interested in being healthy and whole and helpful. We examined our lives and discovered who we really are. Imagine my surprise when I discovered that I was really a wonderful human being. I was a wonderful human being who was walking around with a lot of unhealed pain and trauma. Nowadays, in psychology and therapy, it's all about trauma-informed care, trauma-informed care. Nobody was talking about trauma-informed care back in the 1930s when a group of drugs started to come together and when the big book, the AA Big, was written and this fellowship began. Nobody was talking about trauma-informed care, but they were talking about trauma-informed care. They just weren't using that language. Somewhere along the way, we've all had our hits, and some of them were really, really bad. But the NA Big Book says humility is as much a part of staying clean as food and water are to staying alive. As our addiction progressed, we devoted our energy towards satisfying our material desires. All other needs were beyond our reach. We always wanted gratification of our basic desires. That is the selfishness, the self-centeredness, the self-absorption of the active addict. We want what we want when we want it, but what we want is just a low-level gratification. That's what's so sad, is that we settle for such a low level of living. And as I said earlier, at the end, many of us are not even doing a basic low level of living. Some of us have gone even lower than subsistence. We're living like animals. We have become like animals. We have forgotten that there is a higher and better way to live. The NA Big Book says the seventh step is an action step, and it is time to ask God for help and relief. We have to understand that our way of thinking is not the only way. Other people can give us direction. When someone points out a shortcoming, our first reaction may be defensive. Someone had asked me to sponsor them and I wasn't sure if this was going to work. And I said, well, I'll help you get started and we'll see if it develops into a sponsorship, sponsee relationship. And it ended up not, because early on, what I learned was that this person was not willing to have their thinking challenged. They believed what they believed and they were right. So the good news is that, we don't kick anybody out of the fellowship for any reason unless they're genuinely not able to be around people. I mean, like there's such a state of mental illness that they really do need care outside of the rooms. But, we let anybody hang around. But it is impossible to sponsor someone who is not willing to have their thinking challenged, because as I've said from the beginning, what is required is an entire psychic change. The mind orders the body obeys, the mind orders the mind and meets resistance. It's about changing our thinking. Our problems begin with our thinking. And if we're not willing to have our thinking challenged, if we're not willing to accept that there may be another way, because it's not like I'm trying to tell somebody how to do anything. I'm simply proposing that, well, what if this were possible? But what if this were true? What if, and I think I know what I'm talking about. Okay. But you're here. You're here. You're here for a reason. There's a reason that you're here, and the reason is pain, and your way isn't working. Your way of responding to pain, dealing with pain is not working. The NA Big Book says the seventh step is an action step, and it is time to ask God for help and relief. We have to understand that our way of thinking is not the only way. Other people can give us direction. Again, there are people who have no obvious addiction issues, no alcohol or drug or gambling issues. But we all know people like this. Their way is the only right way. How dare you suggest there's another way? And you just might as well just be quiet, because you can't convince them. And again, we see those people all over social media. There's only one truth about this situation. So we must realize we're not perfect. There will always be room for growth. And the Big Book says, if we truly want to be free, we will take a good look at input from fellow addicts. If the shortcomings we discover are real and we have a chance to be rid of them, we will surely experience a sense of well-being. For some people, that means getting on their knees. For some people, it means being very still and quiet. For some people, that means going out into nature. But the point is to get to that place where we can accept that I'm not in this alone. I don't have to do it alone. I can be wrong sometimes, and it's okay, because I'm gonna be wrong sometimes. The word humble applies because we approach this power greater than ourselves to ask for the freedom to live without the limitations of our past ways. There is that word again, freedom. I am in 12-step recovery because I want to be free, because something had me by the throat, throwing me down, throwing me on the floor, throwing me against the wall. I keep getting in that ring with the 600-pound gorilla. Today will be different. I'll try some different things, mix things up. It was always the same backside kicking. Many of us are willing to work the step without reservations of pure blind faith because we are sick of what we have been doing and how we were feeling. And you may have heard the word sick and tired of being sick and tired. So whatever works, we go all the way, because this is our road to spiritual growth. We change every day. I mean, do you know that on a cellular level, you change every day? The cellular composition of your body is not the same as it was yesterday. Cells are dying and being reborn and all of that. So on a cellular level, we're different. When we gradually and carefully pull ourselves out of the isolation and loneliness of addiction and into the mainstream of life. I am so grateful for this platform. An awful lot of people, when the pandemic hit and all of a sudden we were locked in, couldn't go anywhere, people panicked. And folk who had never heard of any of this before, they didn't know Zoom, Google Meets, Google Play, they didn't know anything about this, but we found out quick. And Zoom meetings and internet meetings were all over the place. Phone meetings have been a thing for a while. A lot of people didn't know that, but phone meetings have been a thing for a while. But all of a sudden, we had this technology because it was life or death. That's what those of us in 12-step recovery know, is that it's life or death. And when we could not physically walk into church basements, walk into the clubhouses and the meeting houses, hug each other, get the bad coffee or whatever, what are we gonna do? Because we need each other. I heard somebody say once that his brother-in-law had just traded one crutch for another. Before it was the booze and drugs, and now it's that 12-step stuff. So bless him, change me. Bless him, change me. Because I have a gift that he doesn't have. And you can call it a crutch, but the transformation that has happened in my life as a result of my surrendering to a higher power, remaking me, transforming me, I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I wouldn't wish addiction and all the horror that goes with it on anybody, but I'm here to say that if that has become your lot in life, come on board. Come on board. The NA Big Book says if we are careless and fail to grasp the spiritual meaning of the step, we may have difficulties and stir up old troubles. The main objective of step 7 is to get out of ourselves and strive to achieve the will of our higher power. But one danger in this is being too hard on ourselves. And back to that 4th step, it is critical that we work that with a sponsor. It is critical that we recover, that we heal in community. Because again, we've got those highs and lows. We want to be the best, we want to be the worst. So in terms of our character defects, we were just the worst of the worst. No, we're not. But we do have a tendency to be too hard on ourselves. but sharing with other recovering addicts will help us to avoid becoming morbidly serious about ourselves. That's why it's so great to be around newcomers. We need newcomers. We need people to come in and they are just a mess and they're beating up on themselves and they're the worst of the worst. And oh my goodness, and they're looking for help. Yay, because help is here. And, and after a few weeks or a few months, they realize all these things, all the shame and guilt and stuff I brought in here, y'all have done it and you're laughing. And there's a lot of laughter in 12-step rooms, a lot. And it's not because the pain that we caused in the world is funny. It's one of the ways that we heal. We're laughing at ourselves, not at the wrong we did, not at the harm we caused. We're laughing at ourselves because one of our issues is that we take ourselves so seriously. There's something called Rule 62 in recovery, and it is don't take yourself so seriously. Take your recovery seriously. Take your responsibilities to life, to your family, take those seriously, but don't take yourself so seriously. Because whatever you got going on, whatever you thought was so whatever, come in the rooms. Just keep coming. You're going to hear it. Somebody else did it too. You're not that special. My grandmother, God rest her soul, was just everything to me. And she lived far away. As I said earlier, when I told a little bit about my story, we were here in DC and she was way down in the deep South. And my mother tried to keep us apart. She didn't want me to be too close to my grandmother, but the heart has its own way. And even though I only spent a little bit of time with my grandmother, I didn't go there that often, but she had such a profound impact on my life. And so she was a sweet little church lady. She was a mother of her church when she died. And I called her one day. I'd been in recovery for a while. I don't know what it was I had done, but she was like my mother confessor. And I called her and I'm like, I can't believe I did. I should know better. And she listened to me and she finally sighed. I say Southern women have a way of sighing. It's like there's a special kind, like they could take a deep sigh. You know what I'm talking about? And she let out this deep sigh and she said, "Child, your sins are so ordinary." And I was actually offended. How did she just say, my sins are ordinary? No, I don't want to be ordinary. I don't even want my sins to be ordinary. And she said, have you told Jesus about it? Have you confessed and repented? I said, yes. She said, then why are you still talking about it? God has heard all this before. Child, come up with something new. That's why I love my grandmother so much. And I never forgot that. And I didn't need to call her and whine, but I did this and I did that. I also didn't need to call my sponsor and whine. I'm a human. I'm a human and I make mistakes. But I have a program today. I have a spiritual blueprint for living today. But foundational to this blueprint is humility. The NA Big Book says, we have noticed that humility plays a big part in this program and our new way of life. We take our inventory, we become ready to let God remove our defects of character. We humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. This is our road to spiritual growth, and we will want to continue. We are ready for step 8. In step 8, it just really gets real, even more than in these first 7 steps. So we will pick up next time at step 8.